There's always a lot of back and forthing going on between film and video games. Most of the time, it's the latter imitating the best aspects of the former, with timeless action classics like James Cameron's Aliens inspiring decades of video game characters, settings, and weapons. When it comes to flipping things around though, finding a genuinely great movie that originally came from a video game is about as rare as a modern release shipping without microtransactions. However, wild movies rarely improve on video games, and if anything, only ever make them worse. Sometimes gaming adaptations of movies, especially bad ones, can completely elevate the original material. It always sucks when the concept of a film is stronger than its execution, and you end up loving the final product for what it could have been, rather than what's right in front of you. But that's where some games step in to show everyone how it could have been done. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 awesome video games that came from terrible movies. Number 10. The Punisher. Sure, the Thomas Jane-led Punisher has become something of a cult success, thanks to how many people can't get enough of Frank Castle's penchant for gory execution-based justice. But 2004's tie-in game is a drastically different beast than its movie counterpart. In THQ's game, Castle has been dishing out his brand of ultraviolence brutality for years, rather than forging his identity throughout the title as in the film, with his trademark black humor most definitely intact, leading to brilliant moments like feeding a perp through a wood chipper, only for Frank to state that he wasn't much of a man, but he makes good mulch. That's sub-Austin Powers stuff that, Frank, come on. It's all enjoyable though, and throw in a bevy of interrogations throughout the game that gave way to optional paths through levels and a supremely weighty combat system, all tied together by Jane's fantastic vocal performance, and this is easily one of the most underrated Marvel properties of all time. Number 9. Enter the Matrix. Forget what anyone tells you when looking back on this now. Enter the Matrix was a fantastic game for any fan of the movies, and those who actively wanted to be mystified and blown away by all the self-indulgent philosophical babble found in them. There's not been a single game that's better captured the mind-blowing spectacles from the films. Want to cartwheel off the side of a wall in slow motion as enemy bullets fill the screen, with the chug of your dual-wielded SMGs pounding away at the opposition? How about landing out of that cartwheel and delivering some truly thunderous roundhouse kicks, with sound effects straight from the film that made you feel just like the alternate reality badass Neo became over the trilogy. While the first movie is iconic, the two sequels that followed it lost the spark that made the original flick so special. But fortunately, Enter was the perfect pick-me-up after these follow-ups sadly missed the mark. Number 8. Wanted Weapons of Fate. Yeah, Wanted Weapons of Fate ripped off Gears of War's stop-and-pop cover mechanics, but there was one thing that elevated the movie tie-in far above other third-person shooters: the ability to bend bullets around walls and over enemy cover to tag headshots just about every 5 minutes. As the whole bullet bending thing isn't done a huge amount in the movie, the game essentially adopted it as its signature mechanic, which enabled the developers to create a combat system that was genuinely breathtaking at times, playing as a reasonably well-modeled James McAvoy, who sadly didn't return to do the voice. Wanted was a fairly short experience, but the core shooting mechanics were supremely fun, and you always forgot the faults when you were arcing a cluster of shotgun pellets in slow motion right at an enemy's face. Number 7. Aliens vs Predator. Both 2004's first AVP movie and the somehow worse 2007 sequel Requiem seemed determined to take a premise that you'd think would be bulletproof and dismantle it entirely to produce two spectacularly unenjoyable hot messes. All fans wanted to see was, well, you can assume based on the title of the game and the movie, but it wouldn't be until 2010, when the franchise returned to video games, that the titular characters were properly brought together in all their head-ripping, acid-tongued glory. By stalking enemies through the trees before delivering a gory fatality as the Predator, you could also scurry around as the aliens or take up a much less powerful role as the Marines. The asymmetrical multiplayer was brilliant, and creeping around dimly lit corridors on the lookout for aliens lurking in the rafters, only to come face to face with a hulking predator, was utterly thrilling. It was a great return to form for a franchise which has spanned video games, comics, and movies, but is particularly memorable because of just how much it upstaged its cinematic counterparts. Number 6. Star Wars Bounty Hunter. It's beating a dead horse at this point to say that the Star Wars prequels are terrible, but boy, they're bloody shit, aren't they? Star Wars Bounty Hunter isn't though. Casting an eye on everyone's second favourite jetpack-wearing Star Wars character Jango Fett, the game was an enjoyable third-person shooter that put the emphasis on mobility and attacking from the sky rather than picking your shots from behind cover. While the ability to jetpack your way around levels was enough to gain the attention of fans though, it was the title's tactile combat system and the ability to scan and hunt down wanted bounties during levels themselves that made the game such a cult favourite. A lot of fans admittedly would have preferred it if the game had starred Boba rather than Jango, but that still didn't stop Bounty Hunter from being one of the most fondly remembered Star Wars games from the PS2 era. Number 5. King Kong. Sure, Peter Jackson's King Kong wasn't downright terrible, but it was certainly nothing to write home about either, merely ticking the boxes of a Kong flick and going on for way too long. The admittedly jaw-dropping spectacles from the movie were brought to life in a surprisingly visceral first-person shooter though, making for a generally pretty thrilling island adventure, as well as letting you jump into the hairy feet of Kong a few times for good measure. Going far deeper than the movie into Skull Island, the sky-high production values actually required you to rely on the game's exquisite sound design to tell you when you were out of ammo or about to be set upon by an enemy. A really neat touch that even now isn't really seen in similar shooters. A 360 launch title was a pretty unlikely place to find one of the best movie tie-ins of all time, but Kong excelled in expanding on all the best parts of the movie that were previously thrown to the wayside. Number 4. Hulk: Ultimate Destruction. While it took Marvel ages to realize that the core ingredient missing from Ang Lee's shoegaze-filled Hulk was the audience's desire to see the titular hero smash everything into a fine paste, Radical Entertainment were already capitalizing on that aspect in Hulk: Ultimate Destruction. By introducing the fantastic gameplay mechanic of weaponization, you were free to make boxing gloves out of police cars, pluck a cache of rockets from the back of military vehicles, or skate around on the back of a bus into a crowd of soldiers. In the later levels, Radical turned to the age-old way of cranking up the difficulty by chucking a ridiculous amount of enemies at you, along with homing missiles that would knock you out the sky every 5 minutes. But for the vast majority of its runtime, this still remains the perfect realization of the Hulk in video game form. Number 3. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Wait, hang on. Hear me out for a second. In no way, shape or form am I saying that the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is bad. It's bloody marvellous. Instead, it's the overindulgent CGI'd up cash cow Hobbit flicks that I'm taking aim at, which were also the reason that Shadow of War exists in the first place. Reportedly originally starting out as a Batman title, which isn't hard to believe going off just how many features the game shares with the Arkham series, the project turned into a Lord of the Rings themed tie-in to run alongside the newer Peter Jackson films. A narratively light tale, Shadow reveled in the gore-tastic thrills of beheading a string of orcs in a blur of blades and muffled growls. Throw in the ability to mind control your own army as the game progresses, and popping their heads like champagne corks when they've served their purpose, and you had one of the most glorious excursions into Middle-earth there's ever been, at least since the original movie tie-ins back in the day anyway. Number 2. The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. Thanks to Vin Diesel himself getting stuck into the design of the game, both as Riddick as a character and a creative consultant heading up his own design studio, it meant that just the right amount of care and attention went into bringing Escape from Butcher Bay to life. Sadly, the same couldn't be said for the movie counterpart, in which the goggle-wearing maniac was still his old see-in-the-dark one-line equipping self, but the movie's events became a mess of sci-fi mumbo-jumbo and bloated excess. With weighty first-person combat that saw you throwing massive haymakers alongside finishing enemies off with deadly takedowns and dastardly weapons. When you finally gain the ability to see in the dark, playing with your prey before you killed them, like the best parts of the movie, made for one of the best franchise extensions in history. Number 1. X-Men Origins: Wolverine. Between the butchering of Deadpool and Gambit in their first big screen debut, there's nothing worth recommending in the movie version of X-Men Origins Wolverine whatsoever, especially in a world where Logan exists. Unlike the movie though, Wolverine's talents as an adamantium-tinged rascal are put to good use in the gaming tie-in, which opens with you plummeting out the sky to eviscerate an opponent miles below, only to then embark on a God of War style slashfest, complete with gory finishes and helicopter takedowns. In an amazing little mechanic, skin and muscle tissue would be blown away by explosions and gunfire, but if you waited around long enough, it, along with your health, would slowly all grow back convincingly. That's a tiny little detail overall, but it's emblematic of the general love, care and attention that help shape the entire experience, resulting in this Wolverine game not only being one of the best movie adaptations ever, but one of the best superhero games entirely. So that's our list. If there are any games that surpass the movies that were based on that I missed here, or if you just want to take the mick out of the way I pronounce film, then let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for even more lists like this every single day. I've been Josh, and I'll see you soon.
Oh, wasn't that something? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe below, and also the people who made this lovely video, they're appearing right here. But if you're thinking to yourself, I want to see more content, Jules, then why not look above my head, as there probably is some. I don't know. I can't see it. Until next time.